This video contains flashing lights, unsettling content and violent content. Viewer discretion advised.
For every frightening foe, with every nasty nemesis, around every memorable menace comes the annoying that one crappy villain who thinks he's hit the big leagues but only manages to get in the way or exploit a dishonorable tactic that prevents the player from advancing.
These festering pimples on an otherwise fantastic game serve to do nothing but make every life you painstakingly saved a living hell. No matter how many times you knock them down, they just keep showing up to rain on your epic parade.
So hey, before we get too frustrated to carry on, let's take a look at the top 70 annoying enemies in games.
Goldcap, Illusion of Gaia. With what appears to be a measly 28 HP and a fairly wide hitbox, Goldcaps don't sound like they're going to be a challenge to defeat. A flying skull with glowing green eyes, small demon horns and a golden finish, hence their name, Goldcaps are a variation of the Skullhead enemy. What makes these guys annoying is their ability to separate into two parts that are flashing and completely invulnerable, leaving you helpless against them. They will float around, still separated for a period of time, before returning to the spot where they initially split. This is the only spot that you can kill them at, and make no mistake, you'll need to be quick. They will only return to their initial form for a tiny window of opportunity. If you don't make it in time, they will resume their dual flying strategy, like some kind of annoying bug, leaving you to lie in wait. To make things even more frustrating, if you move too far from the spot where they go into their invulnerable state, you'll miss the heads rejoining and will have to wait out their attacks until they come back together. So just be speedy, and you're sure to get ahead.
Tentacool and Zubat from Pokemon Red, Blue and Yellow. Encountering wild Zubat in the vast caverns of Mount Moon and the well-named Rock Tunnel, or finding Tentacool as you surf along the ocean to Cinnabar Island and back, are two childhood memories anyone growing up playing the original Pokemon games won't look back fondly on. Hardly a step through the cave opening, barely a paddle off the mainland, and you're guaranteed to bump into one of these things. Zubat is the primary violator, keeping any newbie trainer from advancing further than they can throw their hat. Tentacool is no better, but at least you're further into the game at that point. If they don't want you to leave the battle, tough luck for you, or maybe for them since these Pokemon are a breeze to take down. Although it is annoying when Tentacool poisons you, and you had more than likely been saving that AP for a more important battle later on. Word of advice, stock up on your repels. You'll regret it if you don't.
Flatsos, Banjo Tooie. There's a lot of weird and wonderful enemies to be found in the world of Banjo Tooie, all of which are remarkably inventive, and some of which are frustrating as hell. The Flatsos are one of the enemies that fit both of these categories remarkably well. Encountered in the Cloud Cuckoo Land level, inside the central cavern area, what makes these guys annoying is their penchant for popping out of literal thin air. The only way to get tipped off is to listen for the sound they make when they're about to appear, but it's not particularly long notice. The Flatsos carry a variety of equally flat objects, including sausages, flowers, and candy canes, and they also appear in numerous colors including blue, green, and purple. They're not hard to defeat, but if they decide to swarm you, they can be quite painful to eliminate, especially when you have to deal with them individually. While you're fighting them, be careful not to get hit as well. Paper cuts hurt.
Seagull, Duke Carribean, Life's a Beach. Accurately portraying the annoyance they are in real life, the seagulls are a flying menace. Their squawks and whistles are repetitive and very distracting during battle. Finding the time to take them down whilst relaxing on the beach with the babes is one thing, but being able to hit the blighters is a whole different story. They are so fast and their hitbox is tiny, meaning you'll only know when you've hit them when blood spurts out from their small feathery butts. Burn these birds to ashes, you'll be doing the world a favour. Just be careful you don't stand under them as they fly overhead. You just bought these shoes.
Flying Bomber, The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. Flying enemies that drop bombs on your head. Sounds annoying already, doesn't it? Link has his work cut out for him facing these mushroom Encountered around Koholint Island, They supplement ground forces from the air and toss explosive surprises at Link. The bomber is surprisingly nimble for a shroom with wings, able to easily evade Link's sword attacks, but getting close isn't a good idea in the first place. The worst is facing them in narrow areas with several other enemies attacking as well, so the battle will always be hectic. Unless you have the boomerang or magic rod, don't even think about trying to beat them. Just run out of range as fast and as far as you can. You'll be hard-pressed to find him on anyone's party list, because despite first impressions, he isn't such a fun guy.
Pipi from Mega Man 2. Don't get us wrong, Pipis are totally adorable. Little red and orange robot birds with cheerful faces and a huge egg beneath them. They look like something you could just pick up and cuddle. However, behind their cute metal beaks and big eyes lurks pure egg-laced evil. The eggs attached to their underside hide more of their kind, and the birds will release the eggs onto Mega Man if they see him down below. Upon breaking, they will release a series of smaller Pipis known as co-Pipis. These enemies are just as annoying, however they can be harvested for items with the leaf shield, which can prove to be quite useful. The most effective way to deal with the Pipis is the metal blade. However, it is hard to deal with them in certain circumstances. They're especially frustrating as they will constantly respawn, and if a Pipi is flying around and Mega Man is making his way up a ladder, they will release their payload, and there is no way to prevent having the giant egg smashed onto your head followed by a stream of co-Pipis. Not so cute now, are they?
Scanners, Half-Life 2. Scanners in Half-Life 2 are used as an arm of the city to keep the Combine forces aware and alert to any potential threats. There are two variants of scanners in the game, city scanners and shield scanners. Shield scanners, however, are the most nefarious of the two. When off duty, they can scan the city. Much like the city scanner, the shield scanner snaps pictures and sends them to Combine forces, but has a longer and brighter flash than the city scanners. When eventually destroyed by the player, it does drop some loot helpful for your HEV suit. The most irritating thing about scanners is their ability to temporarily blind you, and then deliver your present location to the exact people who are out and about trying to kill you and prevent your inconvenient resistance. It's like the world's worst drone email system. Well, until further notice anyway.
Imps. Saints Row, got out of hell. Literal goddamn hellspawn. These tiny ingrates are small, not powerful by any means, but boy do they annoy the hell out of tourists in hell. Imps run up to the player in clusters, making jittering noises all the way. They then leap onto you and hold on for dear life as you flail about trying to get them off. They cause small damage over time, but their worst effect is to stifle your movement, meaning that you're sitting duck in the middle of a shootout with other demons. Some may think they're cute, but everyone knows that these horny do even worse than Satan when it comes to aggravating the soul out of gamers.
Juvies from Gears of War 4. Now, we've mentioned the Snatcher in our unsettling enemies list, but this is what they spawn. These athletic poops are really fast, able to jump between buildings and sprint like there's no tomorrow. Seeing them bounce from wall to wall and back to the ground again is amazing, except you're just trying to land a hit at this point and they just won't stop until they're right up in your mug to take a swipe at you. You'll be expending so much ammo just trying to kill one of these things, so good luck on the other 20 or so that form the whole pack. Even their next transformation stages, Imagos and drones, are much more preferable than these things, and both of them can use firearms. Can we just go back to the Snatcher, please? Miniblin from The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. As common an enemy as you want to get, the Miniblin is a pest of the highest order. At first you'll see one and direct Link to attack, but what you have yet to realise is that there are 3 more coming in from every other direction. Sometimes you'll be taking on as many as a dozen of these moblins, brandishing their pitchforks and taunting you. Since they are still quite weak, victory in numbers is how they roll, and once the Miniblins start coming, they won't stop coming. You know the best thing about common enemies? You'll find them everywhere. Try not to get impatient as they chip down your health though, because they cause enough frustration as it is without controller damage.
Leapers, The Binding of Isaac. The Binding of Isaac is a game where there are very few pleasantries to enjoy. With enough blood, guts, gore, and trauma to satisfy the most sadistic of gamers, all in a cartoon style, it's quite the game to face up to. With this, of course, comes some enemies that make you want to throw your mouse or controller at your console or PC and scream loudly. Leapers are one such enemy. An advanced version of the Hopper, they have at least double the health of their counterparts, and are about twice as annoying. While they cannot see you, because they're headless monstrosities, they do seem to be better at finding Isaac than the Hoppers, and will pursue him fervently by jumping into the air and landing at his position. They also have the ability to deal contact damage and shoot bloody projectiles as soon as they hit the ground. All in all, there's certainly something to be avoided, or obliterated as soon as humanly possible, even if the methods of elimination aren't so humane.
Dark Elves, God of War, 2018. When you discover the War of Elves in Alfheim raging, you can't help but be swept up in the Light's plight. Given everything Kratos and Boy have faced so far, it's easy to assume that they're more than prepared, but these fluttery just won't play fair. Dark Elves like to attack in groups of 3 or more, each providing different tactical advantages to the other. 1 or 2 will attack up close, either swiping at you or with their trident on the ground or from the air. They're difficult enough to keep track of. But then there is always one right at the back shooting explosive magic beams that can knock you off balance and leave you open to attack. It's so easy for them to gang up on you, and before you know it, Kratos and Atreus will be dropping like flies. I get it's tactical and all, but so frustrating.
Flight Vehicle, Earth Defense Force 4.1, The Shadow of New Despair. Of all the enemies in Earth Defense Force, giant ants, spiders, robots, freaking kaiju, it's unusual that the one that would annoy us the most would be a simple flight vehicle. This thing seems so inconspicuous that the EDF didn't even give it a proper name. And yet, in the heat of battle, it's likely to be the thing that finishes you off. You're constantly close to death, but it's easy to corral most hostile bugs, so you can pick them off one at a time. But these guys, these silent flying stealth machines, slowly creep up on you and shoot a continuous stream of lasers at your position. You've likely forgotten about them, then suddenly caught unaware, unable to act as they chip off the last bit of health. That's just on low difficulties. On harder modes, they swarm and slowly encompass you from every direction, and their lasers, once very light taps, suddenly drain your health all the way to naught. How? Just how?
Infection Flood. Halo. Of course, something as parasitic as the Flood would wind up on this list, and this is about as clingy as it gets. The infection form of the Flood is the earliest stage of evolution in their bid for universal domination. Little cranial mutations with a dozen or so tendrils that scurry across the floor in large groups may seem like a walk in the park, but these little buggers can easily sneak up on you. If you're not too careful, they can chip away at your shield, and once that's down, make mincemeat of you. Just killing them can be both time consuming and use up lots of your ammunition if you're not careful. At least they have the decency to explode when shot, which can damage all Flood in its vicinity, but don't expect a grand ripple effect. Most annoying of all is when these guys decide to revive other fallen Flood. Because they can do that. Yeah, great, thanks. I'd rather have a warm embrace from the back end of a needler. Stalkers, Dead Space 2. Zombies in space already present an insurmountable problem to even the most seasoned of gamers. But when you've got stealthy zombies who know how to creep up behind you just right, the problem gets just that bit bigger. The Stalkers are a breed of necromorph that are particularly nasty and particularly hard to kill. Their heads are incredibly tough, rendering the use of headshots somewhat unreliable, and they're not able to be dismembered. They also tend to travel in packs, using the strength of numbers to attempt to take Isaac down. If you're not savvy enough, they'll lure you into wide open areas so they can get at you easier, and will use their strong charge attacks to deal as much damage as they can. They'll swoop in, attack, and then back out before you can cause them damage, allowing them to slowly pick you off. The best way to ensure that they're dead is to impale them, and it's always best to double tap, because sometimes it's like these slimy just won't die. The enhanced form is even worse than this, and while their tactics may have you cursing them, it must be admitted that although they are vaguely reminiscent of velociraptors, they are also rather clever.
Headcrab, Half-Life. Headcrabs are one of the most iconic characters in the Half-Life series, and possibly the whole history of gaming, with various pieces of merchandise being created in their honor, including hats. However, this fame comes with a price, and that price is being one of the most annoying enemies to be encountered in gaming. Headcrabs have a penchant for bouncing onto Gordon Freeman and grabbing onto his face, disabling and terrifying you. They also have a habit of jumping out of small spaces such as ventilation, shafts, and will unleash a series of small bites on their prey before they are able to possess them as hosts. The combination of jump scares and being bitten on the ankles really makes for an enemy that is, quite simply, just irritating more than anything else. Situationally, it is advised that you avoid taking on more than one headcrab at a time, as their leaping abilities and high agility can leave you feeling a little overwhelmed. Really, we should have listened to our parents back in primary school when they told us to avoid headcrabs of any and all kinds.
UAV. F.E.A.R. First Encounter Assault Recon. In the entirety of the first F.E.A.R. game, there are only 15 unmanned assault vehicle enemies. However, every single one of these 15 are some of the most annoying enemies to be found in the whole of the game. While you're busy worrying about soldiers and the supernatural to make your job just that bit harder, there are also machine enemies to worry about. UAVs, also known as drones, were created by the Armacom Technology Corporation as a weaponized surveillance unit used for security. While they're not overly irritating when appearing in singular form, in groups, they are particularly deadly. For non-intelligent beings, they are also remarkably smart, with the ability to ambush pointmen from windows, doors, and other entry points. Their attacks are fairly strong, but they are not particularly accurate, and their laser beams can easily be dodged. However, if a small collection of these little metal menaces start to collect around you, you'll have to do your best to get out of what has the potential to become a rather sticky situation.
Lambent Wretches, Gears of War. Emulsion does some crazy to whoever is unlucky enough to get exposed to the parasitic fungus. One of the first variants to annoy Delta Squad is the Black or Lambent Wretches. Much like others of their kind, they are stronger and faster than normal Wretches. But what is irritating about Lambents is their tendency to explode upon death. That wouldn't be so bad, except these guys like to get up close. Real close. Get out of my personal space close. If you see one, watch out because there's more than likely a few more closing in on your position. Kill it at a distance if you can, especially when they're grouped up. The one silver lining is that you may be able to spark a chain reaction, if you're lucky enough.
You take now, you piece of
Moths. Resident Evil Code Veronica. What do you get when you combine 3 moths and a tight corridor? A really frickin' annoying enemy, that's what, and these right here are the worst. An amazing feat since there's only 3 in the whole game. The moths nest inside the worst placed hallway in history, complete with a bend so you can't see where they are around the corner until the camera changes. They drop poisonous spores on your head that can injure you over time, and if that's not bad enough, these things can land on your back and lay eggs there. Eggs. When those things hatch, larvae crawl out onto your shoulder and bite your neck until Claire rips them off and crushes them on the ground. Too little too late, as that'll poison you anyway. There are blue herbs located nearby to help, but if you know what's ahead, you're going to need them. But even a single trip through the moss nest can kiss those resources goodbye.
Infected from Left 4 Dead. If there should ever happen to be a zombie apocalypse, it must get pretty tedious after a while to be killing zombies day in, day out. The infected in Left 4 Dead serve to highlight this, and after a while, smashing the crap out of the undead just gets tiresome. When you're halfway through yet another wave of zombies, shooting at or meleeing them desperately, it makes you just want to stop time and think, how did I get here? Why am I still doing this? The most annoying thing about the infected, aside from their capacity to kill you and their multiple gruesome forms, is simply a matter of numbers. There's just so many of them, and after a while killing them isn't annoying but tedious, especially if you're not playing in multiplayer. Their attacks are frenzied and desperate, involve biting, kicking and flailing, but they can be killed fairly easily, and if you manage to get to a safe room they will no longer be a threat. Another bothersome element of the infected is their predilection of coming towards the source of any sound or light that the player has caused. This means that the second your mate who enjoys fooling around in Left 4 Dead triggers that car alarm, you're going to get flooded by zombies.
Pain Elemental, Doom 2. If the word pain doesn't give you a hint as to how it feels when dealing with these hovering demon balls, how's about this? Pain Elementals are not the ugliest monsters from hell, nor are they necessarily the most common or mobile. They do, however, do one thing that makes them aggravating as hell. The Pain Elemental's primary method of attack is to spit out lost souls like loogies at Doomguy, where they will explode and cause lots of damage. You usually find them in enclosed spaces where the lost souls will be more likely to catch you when they charge ahead, and with the Pain Elemental being so quiet, you won't know what's ahead until you turn that corner into your eventual grave. The Pain Elemental isn't difficult to take down by any means. You can even use its form of ammunition against itself if you're lucky, but the children it leaves behind are usually all that is needed to finish you off. And to think, this would be such a worthless enemy, if not for this one annoying feature.
Zombies. Quake. As the name implies, it takes a pretty big blast of firepower to bring one of these things down. Giving is recommended and works way better than a double tap. Otherwise, they'll just stand right back up after a power nap. If you thought all they do is shamble up to you and give you a good whacking, then you'd be wrong. Quake zombies are fun in that they like to tear off chunks of their own head, butt, or nethers and sling them at your face. It becomes quite the charmingly ghoulish volley of body parts when you have a room full of them, but on the upside they can damage others of their own kind this way. What's a little scary though, is how zombies can stand up to even the most brutal punishment from other enemies. Luckily, if you grab yourself a rocket or grenade launcher, you can make quick work of them. Just be careful in closed spaces, or you could be joining their hordes.
Hornets, Shadow Warrior Classic. There's an old saying in some parts of the world that goes, bad things come in threes. Hornets are a perfect example of why this still holds true today. 1 is a nuisance, 2 is a pain, and 3 or more is just pure frustration. Looking just like normal Earth Hornets, but larger and with delightful glowing red eyes, you can spot these busy buggies from a mile off. They can be detected by their low droning buzzing, which many people also find most irritating, a foreshadowing of further irritation to come. It's not that the Hornets are overly difficult to beat, just that they have incredible agility and the ability to sting at low rank constantly, so if you get caught in a swarm of them, you'll be lucky to escape alive. The most efficient way to kill them is with your shurikens, or, if faced by a swarm, a large dose of bug spray from your Uzi or riot gun. Oddly enough, they all seem to congregate around cliffs in the game fairly frequently. Maybe they're hopeful you get so sick of them, you'll jump off. Who knows?
Will-o'-the-Wisp, Oblivion. There's a lot of enemies to be encountered and fought for the excitement, the glory, and the loot. Will-o'-the-Wisps, of course, are one of these enemies, but something sets them apart from the rest, and that is how bothersome they can be to fight. They are nearly entirely invisible unless they are attacking, which can make fighting them quite the challenge, and their attacks can be fairly devastating for such small creatures. Self-healing is another ability they possess, which has long been the bane of gamers everywhere, so it's an absolute necessity to deal with as much damage as possible before they repair themselves. The biggest challenge with the Will-o'-Wisps is to manage them in groups at a low level, as they are remarkably difficult to kill when you're so inexperienced. Interestingly, they are inspired by the old legend of the Will-o'-Wisp, which told stories of mysterious ghost lights tempting travelers off of well-traveled paths and into forms of various peril at night. While these enemies are slightly different, they're just as annoying, but with less of a chance of tempting you into the marshlands of Ireland in the middle of the night.
Deca Specialists, Saints Row III. Saints Row is not known as a game that is supposed to be particularly challenging. With its comedic focus and satirical basis, it's not often that you will encounter something in a Saints Row game that will bother you very much at all. However, in the third game, when you are faced with the Deca Specialists, that changes things fairly rapidly. When the player gains too much notoriety with the Syndicate gangs, they will send what are essentially trained assassins after you, known as Specialists. There are 3 types of Specialists: Morningstar, Luchadors, and Decas. Out of the 3, the hardest to deal with are, of course, the Deca Specialists. Appearing in the form of girls on roller skates, they can be very disorientating as they skate circles around the player. They also have the ability to teleport and attack with a particularly vicious shock hammer. To make matters worse, they can also knock you to the ground and cause huge amounts of damage. Ironically, the best way to deal with them is a fart in a jar, so let it rip, I guess?
Hunters from Half-Life 2 Episode 2. With their sleek design and the fact they're miniature scout versions of the Strider, it's hard to imagine hunters being annoying over cool. Well, start imagining, because these things are a thorn in your backside from the moment they lay eyes on you. Hunting in packs, they are fast and relentless in their pursuit of their prey, and are just itching to get all up in your face. Their launchers quickly shoot serrated knives at you that can vaporize on contact, or burst if embedded onto a solid surface. Either way, that's a lot of damage to take, so don't be surprised if you see red a lot during your first few encounters. When they get really close, they like to swipe and stomp you with their sturdy legs, and stab at their prey with scythes in their underbelly. What's more, they're tough to kill, so you better keep moving if you don't want them to find and quickly eviscerate you. Thank Christ Valve didn't make the hunters only weak to attacks from the gravity gun like they originally intended. Scavenger from F.E.A.R 3. Ulma Wade conjures up several special ghosts and monsters to keep Point Man and Fettle from reaching her, but what kind of a person gets bored enough to come up with something like the Scavenger? Giant demonic-like dog beasts that spawn wherever the hell they please, bounding at the player in droves, all to take a bite out of you. They can leap, slash, and even heal themselves if you don't put them down quickly enough. In groups or 2 or 3, they don't seem that big of a deal, but there are specific areas like in the port intervals baggage handling areas where they can swarm continuously and overwhelm you in numbers. I guess it makes sense something as annoying as the Scavenger would only appear at the end of the bloody world.
Strelets, Resident Evil 6. Strelets are the Joavo mutation created by the C virus, and much like their mutated buddies, they're not the prettiest of sights. A weird lizard-esque creature, they are known for their incredible agility and speed, and one of their main abilities is that of climbing walls and scurrying across the ceiling with the express purpose of shooting you with tiny spikes that aren't a gesture of goodwill. Taking cover from the spines is possible, but due to their mobility, it is difficult to fire at the Strelets until they decide to stop. In-game tips suggest that melee is the most effective way to take them down, but on harder difficulties they will vomit acid at the player, covering them in extremely dangerous and gross goop. Generally, if you're willing to get uncomfortably close to a nasty-ass monster, a quick shot or two from the shotgun should subdue them. If you're not a fan of mutant breath, however, you can use your automatic rifle to hunt them off the ceiling, and turn them from creepy creature into helpful skill points.
Infected, Dead Island. After the infection started, the tropical island of Banoi really went downhill quickly. The whole area was quickly overrun with zombies of all shapes and sizes, with one of the most basic ones being the Infected. The Infected are the common undead found in your travels, but unlike walkers, these guys are fast, and will lunge at the player with a scream, dealing huge amounts of damage. What makes them particularly annoying to deal with is the fact that they seemingly pop out of nowhere, and they can catch you off guard, leading to some rather unpleasant jump scares. They cannot be outrun by the player either, as they are simply too fast, likely because they are in the early stages of zombification. They are also difficult to beat as they're speedy enough to dodge weaponry, and they also have some climbing abilities as well. There's events that trigger multiple infected attacks at the same time, which can also be very frustrating to deal with as you try to keep track of them all at once. Infected are not affected by many of the landscape issues the player has to deal with that slow them down, so they can be quite irritating to face, especially if you have little more than a few crappy weapons to take them out with.
Lost Soul, Doom 3. It's already weird enough to have flying heads catapulting towards you with a fire jetpack attached to the back of them where their hair should be, but what makes it even weirder is the fact that they're not so much terrifying, but just a pain in the butt. Somewhat mutated, their mouths are wide open and ready to show off their teeth, which are just perfect for biting. Based on the design of the classic Lost Souls, which were skulls with fire streaming behind them, they're not the most pleasant of creatures to be encountering. If not addressed quickly, however, these enemies can prove to be quite an irritant. They scream loudly while preparing to attack, they often attack in flocks, and they can be very difficult to target as they move around haphazardly. One of the worst parts, however, is their ability to knock the player off the ledges and usually into lava. The most effective way to take them down, especially in groups, is a plasma gun or the machine gun. If you're feeling particularly ballsy, you can try a shotgun, and this gives you a chance at an insta-kill but also having your face gnawed off. Your choice.
Sirens, Killing Floor 2. Contending with hordes of Zeds is always a messy job, and very often gets dicey at times when some of the bigger baddies come out to play. But the Sirens come out with their own little bag of tricks that makes this already hectic battle a living hell. Despite being stick thin and frail looking, Sirens have a lot of armor to burn through in order to put them down. This is thanks to the bulletproof frame that covers their chest, but that's just a base problem. The real issue is when they scream and disorient the whole team of players during a firefight, making it difficult to aim, let alone see what it is you're shooting at. The effects are lessened or compounded depending on distance, but even a small amount is enough to throw you off your game and get your whole team wiped out. The head and neck are her only weak spots, but you're likely too stunned to focus on that, so incapacitate her first before she does the same to you.
Drones. Prey 2006. When one of the main characters' comment on an enemy is,
I hate these robots.
you know you're in for a ride that is wild, irritating, and just all around unpleasant. Drones are the obligatory flying enemies that one often encounters in first-person shooters, and when you have to deal with them in any close-quarters context, they're a pain in the butt. They have a variety of weapons including plasma cannons, grenades, and missiles, and they are even worse when there are more than one in the vicinity. Explosives are always the most effective way to eradicate these slippery little buggers, but generally they'll be fought from inside your shuttle. If you find yourself in a pinch, the acid spray or an autocannon can also be pretty handy. Honestly, this makes finding them so much easier and will hopefully result in reduction in bitter swearing at your game. Dwarven Spider, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The atmosphere of the abandoned Dwemer ruins in the province of Skyrim is already eerie enough without the sound of the clinking legs of dwarven spiders making their merry way towards you. Dwarven spiders are one of the few remaining inhabitants of the Dwemer cities and were originally created to keep the machinery intact and operational. When their masters decided to conduct their mass disappearance from the lands of Tamriel, the spiders didn't get the memo and just kept on keeping on. Therefore, when the Dragonborn makes their way into any of the Dwemer ruins, they'll inevitably stumble across these bronze little scurrying towards them. While they're not the biggest of enemies, they're also pretty feisty and are also blessed with 25% magicka resistance. So if you're a mage, it is suggested you level yourself up before even thinking about entering the ruins. If the player uses unrelenting force, you might get a minute of respite before getting pounced on by these enemies again, but not much aside from hacking them to death with the sword will help you. They have decent drops upon death though, including soul gems, dwarven oil, and other precious stones. One thing to keep in mind is that there are 2 dwarven spiders you can adopt as your follower throughout the game, giving you the ability to cause your enemies a world of bronze spider hurt.
Racks from Borderlands. Racks are an iconic part of the fabric of the Borderlands. They're very squishy enemies with low health, but they do prove to be a little bit of a pain in the behind. Vaguely resembling pterodactyls with their large wings and sloped heads, they circle the skies looking for the next Vault Hunter to scavenge the bones off of. To add to their charming repertoire, they're also blessed with some lovely sharp claws. While easy to defeat, they come in flocks, sometimes to the point of trying to overwhelm the player, and their swooping attacks are like ant bites. Not much of a consequence, but just really annoying. They can be easily addressed with good old shotguns, machine guns, and rocket launchers, but it's always best to take them down as soon as they're seen because they can become rather overwhelming in groups. Besides, it's all worth it for the potential of some of those fancier coloured weapons, no matter how frustrated you might get in the process.
Grineer Scorpion, Warframe. Half machine, half ugly, the Scorpion class of the Grineer forces can go jump off a cliff for how frustrating it can be to face in battle. Their machete deals more damage than the grunts, although this is merely a slight inconvenience compared to their secondary weapon. Scorpions also wield a rip line, which shoots and attaches itself to Tenno with near unavoidable precision, oddly always aimed to hit the groin. She will then reel you in like a fish on a line and cleave continuously until you arrive at her feet. It's worse when she pulls you into a horde of other hostiles, but the real nightmare fuel, get it? Real? Is facing a whole squad of scorpions, spamming the rip line one after the next. They've certainly earned their name, but as for being a great enemy, they certainly don't have me hooked.
Octoroks, The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild. The latest Legend of Zelda, at least by the time of this reading, is so wonderful to explore. You just want to spend hours on end reaching the deepest depths and scaling the tallest peaks. You could be climbing a wall and... Octoroks are a returning Legend of Zelda enemy that can really make you want to pull your hair out sometimes when you just want to avoid them. You're just wandering through the wilderness, minding your own business, decide to go fight them, they constantly barrage you with projectiles. Get too close, and they hide under the surface of whatever they're fighting on. Leave the battle, and they start spitting at you again. Make up your mind! There are 5 kinds of these creatures scattered across Hyrule, each with varied ways to annoy you. Forest, water, snow, rock, and treasure. Sure, they can be useful for cleaning rusted gear, and you can even hit their camouflage atop their heads to make them easier to attack, except in the case of rock, but they could have been much nicer in letting you know that you were intruding on their private space. Cleaners, The Division. The high and mighty, self-appointed sterilization team operating in the ruins of New York, the Cleaners are an unwelcome faction made up of mostly janitors and hospitality staff. Not wanting the infection to spread, they have taken it upon themselves to cleanse the city of anyone and everyone within as they could possibly be infected. How? By fighting the germs with fire, of course. Most enemy types buzz around you like flies with regular weaponry, but they can drop a few Molotovs that can seriously screw up your day. Get enough of them, and suddenly, the Division turns into Cartwheel Simulator 2016. Shield variants prefer to quietly flank you whilst you are distracted and swipe with a fire axe, which would have been cooler if the axe had literally been on fire. Last, but certainly not liked, are the Incinerators. These guys are the definition of aggravating. 2 gas canisters on their backs shoot out waves of fire over vast distances, making cover useless. As little as 5 seconds bathed in flame will see your goose cooked. Oh, and they're heavily armoured too, so have fun with that. I'd like to tell them where to shove their fire hose. Super Mutant Suicider, Fallout 4. The wasteland may be unforgiving, but there's even less of a chance once facing the Suicider. There's not much to this one. Take your run-of-the-mill super mutant, strap a mini-nuke to their right hand, and voila! Your own personal jolly green giant nuclear explosion of nope. They usually don't travel outside of a group, so you'll usually encounter them amidst the heat of a battle where you're too busy to see them coming. The beeping of the nuclear device will catch your attention, but sometimes it's hard to distinguish one super mutant from another, and before you know it, one comes barreling at you from around a corner or over a hill, and in one fell swoop, cuts the sole survivor down where so many others have failed. Even if they only get within a few meters of you, there's a chance you can shoot the mini-nuke and badly damage or kill yourself regardless. So there's no winning with these guys unless you cut them down far off. It's pretty rewarding having one explode amongst his mates, but 9 times out of 10, you're just scrambling to catch sight of him before he sneaks up upon you and...
Malboro, Final Fantasy VIII. Swinging into the fray with a sharp, frightening cry, the Malboro arrives to make this encounter as painful as possible. These giant green tentacle monsters have been an ongoing enemy in the Final Fantasy series, but VIII's return decided to be even more of a pain in the ass than usual. They have the highest health of any common enemy in the game, but are only found one at a time. While that would be ideal under normal circumstances, The major hit point level and its devastating attack Bad Breath cause major troubles. See, Bad Breath incurs multiple status effects on its opponents, meaning that your party will be overcome with paralysis, sleep, and numerous other changes almost immediately. It's impossible to take it down in the first move, so you'll be struggling essentially from the get-go. And although you have a wide window to bring it down, should you manage to heal your party, it'll stall all over again once Bad Breath makes a return. You could simply avoid it though, right? Bad news is, you'll probably want to seek this creature out, as stealing its tentacles can help upgrade weapons and teach Quistis valuable moves.
Cloaker from Payday 2. There are a lot of things to stress over during a heist. You have to get hardware, make sure you can get in and out with anyone seeing your face, and make your getaway with your target in tow. That's difficult enough with the cops getting involved, but the cloakers are an unnecessary annoyance. Highly trained special ops members, these guys show up out of the damnedest of places, dropping down from the vents and manholes. It's pretty obvious when they've arrived since they project an electrical hum due to the night vision goggles that they sport. And when they're far away, cloakers aren't too much trouble, but up close they suddenly unleash their martial arts, kicking you down and berating you until one of your team encourages them to leave. But you'll be down for more than enough time for the fuzz to finish the job, unless you're beaten to death first. Can't a guy just rob a bank in peace anymore?
Booze. Luigi's Mansion. Whenever a new game from the Super Mario universe comes out, Luigi always gets lumped with the worst jobs. While his brother's out there saving princesses and becoming the champion of the Mushroom Kingdom, Luigi gets stuck making his way through an old haunted mansion to save his brother. The main aim of Luigi's Mansion is, of course, getting to Mario, but to do that you have to go through the boos. The main enemies of the game, the boos are a variety of ghosts that Luigi must attack with his Boltergust 3000 to drain their HP and capture. There are 51 boos total in the game, and all of them have different attacks, methods of diversion and evasion, and levels of difficulty. What makes the boos somewhat frustrating is their wide levels of difference. While this also makes the game exciting and new every time, it can be difficult to learn the patterns with 51 different enemies. To make matters worse, capturing boos is the only way to proceed to certain areas of the game, and sometimes they will sneak off halfway through a battle, forcing Luigi to chase them down. If you happen to catch them all, however, you will be handsomely rewarded. So grab your vacuum cleaner and let's hope you don't suck at it.
Eagles. Far Cry 4. It seems the theme of this list is birds or flying enemies using their air superiority to make your life miserable. Well, straight out of an Alfred Hitchcock wet dream soars the mighty eagle before plummeting down and tearing off your face. Seemingly random, although it feels more like a targeted attack, the Black Eagles of Kyrat will swoop down and claw at your face with their large talons or peck without mercy. They take up the whole focus of the screen, meaning that if you're in danger because of something else, you won't be able to see it coming. The best part is that this unprovoked assault could happen at any time, whether you're out on a nice hike, just taking a leak, or smack bang in the middle of a firefight. Just to spite you, their feathers that you can scavenge don't help craft anything at all, meaning that you're wasting bullets just bringing them down. All of the animals of Far Cry 4 are a wild ride, but the eagle takes the cake by a long shot.
Skull Puffs. Little Nemo, the Dream Master. Little Nemo, the Dream Master is one of those Nintendo Entertainment System games that just missed out on a classic status for some reason. Featuring the gorgeous world in a young boy's dreams, every single level and enemy feels beautifully crafted. That being said, there's some aspects of this game that just make it super frustrating to play. Skull Puffs first appear in the second level known as the Flower Garden, and will constantly spawn, blocking the path of the player, and, if you try to avoid them, they will zigzag into your path, attempting to attack. Even more irritating, their spawn areas are completely random, leaving you to only be able to guess where they're going to pop up from. If you make it through the Flower Garden, you're not off scot-free. They will continue to appear throughout the game, just to make sure you're sufficiently on guard. One thing that can be said for them is that they certainly keep the player on their toes.
Combat Engineer, Mass Effect 3. There's only one thing worse than an annoying enemy in the game, and that's an annoying enemy with a turret. Combat engineers in Mass Effect 3 have dedicated years to their craft, to perfecting their turret design in such a way that provides maximum frustration to the player. Even though they have lighter armor than their Cerberus Force mates, they can still prove to be a massive problem, with their turrets capable of taking down the whole squad while they take the back door out. They also have the ability to help out their buddies by repairing their armor or their mechanical additions. What puts these guys into the level from the server's force is their capability to repair their turrets and assist the rest of the force, which, if left alone for long enough, could allow them to revitalize the entire force. And as we know, there's nothing quite as frustrating as having to essentially start a battle all the way from the beginning again.
Purple Ninjas, Double Dragon 2. Double Dragon is one of those iconic Nintendo Entertainment System games that a lot of people remember fondly. However, if you played this as a kid, which many of us did, you may remember just how frustrating the ninja enemies could be. The purple ninjas, of course, were the absolute worst of these. Extremely powerful and agile, they can cause a player oodles of damage given the chance. If you're an adept player who knows how to time attacks well, they can easily be defeated, but this usually takes a lot of time and practice. If you let your guard down for even a second, however, the ninjas will charge at you and attack in a frenzy. This series of attacks makes it near impossible to regain your rhythm. The purple ninjas will run around you in circles with their agility, counter moves you throw at them if you don't time them well enough, toss shurikens, and knock the player to the ground. While not super common, they are super annoying. So next time you dust off your Nintendo Entertainment System and get out the Double Dragon 2 cartridge, keep the purple ninjas in mind. Police, Grand Theft Auto 5. Obey and survive, the motto of the Los Santos Police Department, ain't it the damn truth. Police are ruthless in GTA 5, who always come tearing down on you the instant you break the law. They have a near psychic ability, knowing that you've broken the law whether you're out of sight in a building, an alley, or out in the middle of the desert. They swarm in your direction, overwhelm your position, and hunt you down with every last inch of manpower they have. It's near impossible to shake them at times, almost knowing the exact route you're going to take. And they spare no expense trashing their cars just to get you to pull over. Any minor infraction, and you're toast. Their dedication to carnage for the sake of one criminal is really weird, especially considering that they hardly patrol the city at all.
The Flying Birdman from 2013's Shadow Warrior. Screeching down from the heavens, or at least the highest point in hell, swoops in the Birdman. Not the fake flying Birdmen with their flags for wings barely hovering a second off the ground. No, we're talking about the ones with the glorious feathered wings, which is about the only thing I can compliment them on. They just stay there, up in the sky, and fling fiery balls of, well, fire at you. It's ridiculous how accurate they can be, and shooting them down is difficult when they're buzzing all over the damn place. Since they attack in large swarms of a dozen or more at a time, you'll be bombarded from all directions, and their flight patterns are an unpredictable jumble. When you manage to take their health down, they enter a rage mode and begin spiraling towards you like a missile, and will explode on contact, dealing severe damage. They can't just leave you to bask in your victory over them. Swat them out of the sky like flies, otherwise they're sure to make a landing right on your head.
Music Overseers, Dishonored. Corvo Attano just cannot catch a damn break. Even if he's in an abbey, he still has a bunch of people there to bother him, subdue his natural powers, and prevent him from killing people. It really is a drag. The enemies who patrol the abbey of the Everyman are known as Warfare Overseers, and they're bad enough, but certain Overseers can use devices they carry with them, known as Overseer music boxes. These weapons use the hidden sound waves of the world to manipulate supernatural powers and render them useless, as well as providing a high amount of damage to supernatural targets. This of course makes Corvo easy prey. While fighting Overseers is already hard enough, beating those carrying the music box is especially difficult. They have masks to shield their faces, and their music boxes protect a large portion of their body, leaving few options for the player, especially as you cannot use your powers. If you're not a fan of mass slaughter, taking out music overseers is the first priority, as they can cancel the procession ability and cut Corvo off mid-blink. The easiest way to get rid of them is to go full Mafia style and aim for the kneecaps, or go around from behind. It'd be handy if they had something on hand that wasn't so big. Ever heard of an iPod, guys?
Security bots from Bioshock. You'd think that wall climbing splicers or heavy duty big daddies would make this list. Think again. Security bots are a nightmare. Sure, they can be great once hacked when they're on your side, unless they get trapped in a doorway and somehow manage to blow up nearby. When they're your enemy though, it's another story entirely. Security bots are often called when you've accidentally set off the surveillance cameras around Rapture, and are constantly on hand to replace their fallen brethren for as long as the alarm rings out, a minute or more. You can pay to shut them down, if you're not too busy dancing through bullets and dodging fan blades to find it though. Or you could go toe to toe with these things and blast them with electricity, but good luck hitting them. Don't get me started on the ones controlled by other splicers, but at least the controller is easier to hit, and he doesn't explode and hurt you when he dies. Just pay Ryan and be done with these things. Would you kindly buzz off?
Jockey, Left 4 Dead 2. Made especially for the second installment, the Jockey is diminutive, fast, and incredibly annoying. You can hear it coming with its demented manic laughing and high-pitched yelps, but does that prepare you? No, because once this thing latches on, it's a game over unless you have a helpful team. But you're playing Left 4 Dead. What are the chances of that? When the Jockey leaps onto your shoulders and batters you with its scrawny arms, the little monster takes complete control and steers you every which way but closer to allies. This means that it could turn you right into the Horde, who have no qualms taking you on. Or else you'll be forced into a fire and, well, last time I checked, you aren't immune to that either. Honestly, this special infected humper can go piss off on the horse it rode in on, because, like Coach says,
that ain't right for a man to be ridden like that.
Wasps, Earth Defense Force, Insect Armageddon. In a game that's all about being the world's most elite bug extermination army, there's a lot of giant insects to be seen and bothered by. From ants to spiders, from spiders to giant metal robots, there's a lot to see in terms of enemies. While all of these enemies are varying grades of irritating, especially spiders if you're a wing diver, wasps just take the cake. Much as in real life, they pack quite a punch, with the ability to spit corrosive acid, bite the player, and if you're particularly unlucky, deal a tackle attack that causes massive amounts of damage. If you happen to be unlucky enough to fall prey to a wasp, only attacks from your team members will be able to break their hold. As you progress through the game, you also have the chance to encounter a metal wasp, which might as well be the Terminator of wasp kind. The only solace you will likely be able to find with these enemies is their chance to drop a weapon on death. So even in your suffering, you still have a chance at some great loot.
Black Ops, Half-Life Opposing Force. Elusive, deadly, and downright annoying. Black Ops aren't just after the player's head, but anyone aware of the goings-on within Black Mesa. They hold complete disdain for scientists and soldiers alike, and it shows in their method, mercilessly slaughtering every witness, or when there's no chance of escape from the impending nuclear detonation, leave them dead. Male and female variants are crack shots, able to sprint miles at a time and leap onto balconies with ease. It takes a hell of a lot of patience and skill to take them down, that is, if you see them coming at all. Black Ops are dead silent, to the point where they won't even make noises even if you shoot at them. They're experts that can hit you from anywhere in groups at a time, so unless you know this game like the back of your hand, these guys will have plenty of fun toying with you.
Rabid Stalkers, Borderlands 2. The Borderlands are a great place to go outside, arm yourself to the teeth, and shoot everything in front of you. It's the ultimate badass simulator. However, once in a while, there's an enemy that crops up that simply won't die. The Rabid Stalkers are said enemy in the second game, and there's pages upon pages of online forums filled with profanities about the best way to beat them. Available once you get into true Vault Hunter mode, they are lizard-like creatures with large spikes protruding from their bodies, and gaudy scaling that you can spot from a mile off. Not that simply spotting them will help you to get away. They're fast and will often come onto a player with crippling melee attacks that'll obliterate your health. When they're not on top of you trying to rip you to pieces, they're throwing spikes at you to ensure that you know that they're not to be messed with. They also have exceptionally high health, damage, and shield threshold, designed to mess you up as much as possible. Fortunately, players have found a way to get around these terrifying little monsters. If there's something slightly taller than the ground nearby, hop onto it. They'll desperately try to melee you to no avail, and you can shoot them until they finally die. Essentially, it'll be over if you have the high ground.
Imperial Purge Trooper, Star Wars: The Force Unleashed. You know when you see an enemy and your first thought is just a big old nope? Purge troopers are that enemy. With their pitch black Imperial armor and their enormous stature, they're quite a sight to be beheld. Their suits are particularly well armored, meaning that lightsaber attacks are not particularly effective against them. And they also have been equipped with a shield to block said attacks. Their primary form of attack is an energy beam that emerges from their arm, and they'll use it as a blade to slash at their enemies. If that wasn't enough, they also have the capability to use a rocket launcher in their shoulder to fire projectiles at the player, and also launch an energy shield to prevent being attacked. Since these guys are essentially the ultimate badasses, almost invulnerable to everything you can do, players had to get creative with their attacks to defeat them. A well-known exploit in the game is to stand at a distance or in an area where you can't be attacked, and use your force lightning to attack them, and then standing there and waiting for your force meter to recharge. Hey, if it helps take down the Empire, we have no complaints.
Support Brotherhood from the Darkness 2. When playing any multiplayer game, the first rule of thumb is to seek and destroy any and all healers that you can, especially the ones that prevent you from attacking everyone else in the game. This same rule holds true for the Support Brotherhood enemies in the Darkness 2. Members of an elite secret society, the Support Brotherhood have been tasked with keeping all the other members of their nefarious organization alive. However, that's not to say they're totally harmless in and of themselves. They carry lights that serve to weaken Jackie's power, and if this is destroyed, they will then use flash grenades to protect themselves, along with pistols. They also wear helmets, making them impervious to headshots, which only serves to make them more frustrating to kill. Again, they serve to provide a very important lesson though, which is always aim for the support first.
Common Eludran Reptiloid, Serious Sam the Second Encounter, HD. In the world of Serious Sam, it's a general rule of thumb that anything that knows how to throw stuff at you is going to be annoying as heck. One of the many weird aliens that have come to Earth with the express purpose of bothering the player. Common Eludran Reptiloids are reptilian creatures with two main attacks. They will melee punch you if you get too close, but their annoying attack is that of the energy ball. They will hurl homing energy balls at Sam, and if you manage to avoid them, the ball will simply try and hit you again. They can be destroyed with weapons, however they will not be if they hit the wall, making it quite difficult to avoid a deadly game of Pong. To make matters worse, these enemies are big, and also incredibly strong. Their punches are not easy to deal with if you do even manage to get that close. Moral of the story, if you're a freaky alien lizard man, maybe don't go out and make deals with Mental in exchange for magical powers. It will rarely work out in your favour and will usually result in you being violently killed by some dude called Sam.
Suicide Bomber, Rainbow Six Siege. When you hear that hollow breathing and constant beeping, watch your backs and keep your distance. There's a suicide bomber in your midst. The White Masks are a formidable faction of enemies, and you're most likely focusing on taking them down during Terrorist Hunt. But it always seems from out of the blue appears a heavily armored man complete with red lights and heavy explosives strapped to his chest. He'll run at or pursue you into a corner and get as close as he can, then detonate the lot of you into oblivion. Suicide bombers do not care for their own lives, and will mindlessly follow operatives wherever they go. Plus they're a pain to bring down since their armor is so thick that it withstands attack from most weaponry. Aim for the weak spot on the face, or you can shoot the explosives from afar, although this too could cause problems for any allies caught in the blast, which can penetrate through most breakable surfaces and kill anyone on the opposite side. The suicide bombers are usually the main cause of mission failure, often the last thing seen before death takes you.
F.E.A.R, Zelda 2 Adventure of Link. A possible gender variant of the Falcaroo, F.E.A.R are armored guards similar to the Iron Knuckle enemies, except for two things. For starters, their head is that of a bird. And lastly, but most frustrating, is that they are agile as hell. Although they only appear in the Great Palace, F.E.A.R can jump back and forth over Link and skillfully parry most attacks with their shields. Bad enough, but it gets frustratingly worse, as they throw daggers at multiple heights, even while jumping. Even if you flee, There's no guarantee of making it out alive as they keep pursuing you down tunnels and hurl daggers through solid matter. The best strategy you have is to hit them from underneath as they jump over your head, but there's a good chance you get damaged just by touching them, so they're just as deadly anyway. So you can imagine everyone playing this game when it first came out at one point threw their controllers down, dying to these enemies, and shouted "fuck" at their screams. Or maybe it was another word starting with F.
Wollywog. Pikmin. In the mass escort mission that is the Pikmin franchise, it goes without saying that the most frustrating situation any player can encounter is when some giant monster turns up to smush your little companions into microscopic mulch. Enter the Wollywog. Bloated, gray, and largely unwelcome, these hop in all unannounced and plop down on all of your Pikmin party. Why? Because they want to. Widely regarded as the worst enemy, they can be quick and on point to take out a fair few of your little buddies, especially if you're already in the middle of an encounter. Although it would be better altogether if they simply didn't show up in the first place.
The Purple Ghost. Digger T Rock, Legend of the Lost City. Far underground, level 5 to be exact, the skeletons rise from their suspiciously deep graves. Joining them in their bid to stop Mr. Rock from reaching the exit is a single purple ghost, who just so happens to be the most annoying enemy in the game. You're already fighting against time to find the damn door, but then you have Jasper the ghost who picks you up and carries you wherever he damn well pleases. You can't leave his grasp either, although you can postpone him from reaching you. That in of itself is difficult, because when you're not too busy platforming or avoiding other enemies, the ghost is floating through solid matter to reach you. Only a blast from dynamite can get it to disappear, but only for that moment, as sooner or later, he'll just show up again. Before long, you'll find you've lost the spirit to beat this game.
Octabrain, Duke Nukem Forever. For those of us who did play Duke Nukem Forever, there's quite the challenge to be found in facing the Octabrain enemy. When you've lived your life looking like a disembodied scrotal sack with tentacles, it's no surprise that you'd be bitter enough to be pretty badass. The Octabrain has a number of attacks, all of which are projected from the air as it hovers above you. This of course makes it frustrating to hit, and it has the capability to use objects from the environment to hurl at Duke. Even when defeated, the Octabrain is a total pain, as it will explode upon impact with the ground, dealing huge amounts of damage to everything in the immediate vicinity. To ensure that these enemies cause the maximum amount of irritation, however, they are also given the capability to grab any projectile weapons that are fired at them, including pipe bombs, rockets from rocket launchers, and fire from the Devastator. Out of all of these, only the pipe bomb can deal effective damage, and only if you detonate it quick enough. It's like the world's most hardcore game of handball with a weird alien.
Hunters in Resident Evil 3. When in production, the hunters in Resident Evil were affectionately known as Frogger. However, these guys are a far cry from the cute frog game that we all know and love. Massive, hulking, mutated creatures, the hunters appear in a variety of forms and in a number of the Resident Evil games. The trouble with these enemies is their capability to strike you with heavy attacks while also remaining remarkably agile. They are blessed with the ability to decimate your health, and if you're on half health, they can even one-shot you into the great beyond without a second thought. This is especially frustrating if you haven't saved in a while. Hunters are also frustrating to kill and will take a lot of ammo from your gun to get them down, and in a small room they are particularly deadly and will corner the player and continue to swipe until they manage to kill you. The only mildly satisfying thing about these enormous pains in the bum is the little screech they let out when they die, just to let you know you're finally safe to move on. How kind of them.
Ghost Victims, Silent Hill 4, The Room. The ghosts that haunt the many locations of Silent Hill 4 are a major nuisance, and you'll hardly be rid of them. Mainly because they are the most common enemy of the game, but secondly, because you can't kill the things. Sure, you can pin them to the ground, but there's a limit to how often you can do that, so you have to be really tactful going about that. They block your path especially in the narrower corridors of the train stations, and I don't want to mention what it's like facing them inside the damn trains. Even their mere presence can cause damage and a right headache, literally and figuratively. Who do I have to kill to get rid of these things? Go piss off the real killer instead of pestering me.
Cataquax, Super Mario Sunshine. Everyone knows Cataquax, and even if you think you don't, you'll probably remember soon. Featuring in a number of Mario games, they are probably most famous for their appearance on Peach Beach in the Mario Kart games. And while they are largely unbothered by the small Italian man making his way through their territory, if Mario gets too close to them, they will launch him into the air, giving him quite a shock. Initially, they're not too hard to deal with. The blue Cataquacs are fairly docile, but as the game progresses, more and more of a new Cataquac genus appears, colored red. These red ones are far more aggressive than their counterparts, and they will approach Mario with far worse intentions. The most irritating thing about these enemies is their inability to be destroyed by Mario. Even with the heaviest attacks from his FLUDD, they will only be flipped over long enough for him to get a coin. Yoshi and the Dune Buds are all that can truly eliminate the Cataquacs.
Bone wheel skeletons in Dark Souls. When Dark Souls thrusted the survival genre into the mainstream, there was much discussion about how difficult every enemy was to beat, in one way or another. However, as strategies were found and methods for defeating nearly every creature were uncovered, people got adept at the game. That being said, there's some enemies that make even the most skilled of players grind their teeth in irritation when fighting them. The bone wheel skeletons in the original Dark Souls game fit this bill to a T. Their name is quite literal. They are skeletons attached to wheels, most likely a nod to the Catherine wheels used as torture devices. These enemies are known for their ability to break the player's guard, and while rolling and upping your poise can help, there is no real unbreakable defense against them. Their movements can also be alarmingly unpredictable, and this may cause you difficulty in aiming to hit them. Not to mention they can suck your entire health bar away within a matter of seconds, and if there's more than one of them, good luck, especially if you're up against a wall. Dark Souls is well known for being a game that can cause serious damage to a console on the basis of frustration, and the bone wheel skeletons make this possibility all the more real.
Birds. Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden gives you the opportunity to be a badass ninja, shooting your way through America, trying to avenge the death of your father, and save the world along the way. Enter the birds. Birds in Ninja Gaiden come in many shapes and sizes. There are falcons and eagles, but all of them are nasty as hell. They move incredibly fast and will swoop in on Hayabusa, and if you're quick enough, you might be able to hit them. However, this doesn't stop the fact that the birds can endlessly respawn, providing with a continuous bird swarm that feels near impossible to escape from. They will flap towards you at almost the speed of light, with only murder on their minds, and their attacks can rapidly decimate your health. The best way to handle the birds, from what has been widely understood by NES playing children across the world, is to simply cry, throw it on your controller, and ask a parent to play it for us. This is the only strategy that legitimately seems to work against those feathered fiends.
Skeletons. Minecraft. Do these really need explaining? They're the bane of every Minecraft player's existence. Sure, the creeper can destroy your building project, but the skeleton is ruthless, agonizing to fight, and above all, unfair. Each is equipped with a bow and arrow, which they can fire with the utmost precision of a marksman. Evasive maneuvers doesn't mean when facing these undead jerks, since they will always hit you unless you're behind cover, and even then they can sometimes clip and hit you through corners. You can run as fast as you want, as far as you want, but they will keep firing and always follow until they finally cut you down and spill loot all over the place. Now you've got to face them all over again just to get your stuff back. Don't get your hopes up. Medusa Head, Castlevania. What could possibly make platforming levels harder than they already are? How's about the flying head of Medusa tearing across the screen at poor Simon Belmont as he tries to keep his balance? You know Dracula's one mean if he implements this kind of an obstacle, and it stands to reason that you'd wind up fighting Medusa herself, but to grow extra heads of her just to have them patrol your castle is a little overkill, what with all the other ghoulish creatures roaming the halls. They're all so fast, and their wavy pattern of movement makes them so hard to predict as they hurtle towards you that you're more than likely to go jump right into the buggers. Medusa heads are the most frustrating hazards in Castlevania to navigate around, and they're apparently so good at their jobs that they even show up when Medusa herself wasn't allowed back for another crack as a boss battle. Cazador, Fallout New Vegas. Cazadors are the worst Fallout enemy in the history of Fallout enemies, maybe ever. A tarantula hawk spider wasp that has been mutated by Dr. Boris, definitely on a Tuesday, though he can't accurately disclose more than that, to be enormous and terrifying. They buzz around the Mojave, just looking for a certain courier to bother. More dangerous than rad scorpions and more annoying than escort missions, Cazadors are one thing you don't want to encounter on your travels. What makes them so irritating is how small they are compared to other targets, making them hard to hit, which is combined with their enormous damage and agility. Their stings, as previously mentioned, cause more damage than a rad scorpion stinger attack. They also have a chance to cause poisoning, but this doesn't always occur, fortunately. They usually travel in pairs or groups, and if you see a swarm, it's best to check you have anti-venom and stim packs at the ready. To be fair, their real-world counterparts are just as terrifying, albeit slightly smaller. Their stings have been described as blindingly fierce and shockingly electric. I guess in this case, art really does imitate life. Cliff Racers, The Elder Scrolls 3, Morrowind. Up in the sky! It's not a bird, and planes don't exist in Tamriel, so it can only be a goddamn cliff racer. And you thought random dragon encounters in Skyrim are bad. The cliff racer hates anyone it sees from the moment it sets its sight on them from across Vardenfell. They swoop down, often in large groups, and swipe and stab at their prey with long tails that keep it just that far off the ground for melee combat to be near useless against them. With their shrill squawks ringing in your ears on every high mountain and even along the plains of Morrowind, the cliff racer never seems to give up, no matter how many you slay. Add to that their terrible AI, often resulting in them having erratic movements that gets them caught in trees and rocks, and you've got the makings of an aggravating enemy. They are widely regarded by players and developers alike to be the biggest pest of the Elder Scrolls series, so it should come to you as no surprise that they were almost entirely culled by the events of Oblivion. Good riddance. No one will miss you.
Did you enjoy the video? Why not click the bell icon and subscribe to see more content from us at Tats Talk Videos. And now let's see the creators of this video.